started as an occupational therapist in the 80s and worked directly with disabled people in the East End of Glasgow, and really learning a lot more than I'd ever learned out of books about the impact of social deprivation on people's lives, on their impairment, on the outcomes for them as an individual. So I really enjoyed that work, but it really started me, I think, along that trajectory of being feeling very passionate about issues around poverty, about exclusion, and issues of disability. I'm a disabled person myself. I acquired an impairment at birth, but it wasn't really diagnosed till I was 14. So I've lived with chronic pain and a mobility impairment all of my life, and have been in and out of hospital when I was younger. So that had quite a profound effect on how I saw myself as an individual and where I fitted in terms of the wider world. So I was able to take that passion that I had, in my personal life for arguing my way out of situations and saying, no, I should be allowed to do this. It shouldn't be my impairment that stops me. And marry that with the work that I did and use that in situations where I was working in social care or in organisations later on in my career when I became a senior manager and then finally chief executive of several national organisations here in Scotland. So it was very important for me to embed equalities in everything that I did into the mix. I came out as a lesbian when I was 36. I'd been doing too much of the chat around disability up until then. I think I hadn't really kind of faced up to what those issues around my sexuality were. So I was very fortunate to very soon after that meet my life partner and be with her ever since, which has been a great strong supporter of me all these years, which is great. And yeah, so here I am now being a board chair with 3 different organisations. But as I say, I really feel their values are very aligned. They're very much about helping people to live the life that they want to live. Without a doubt, I think it has to be male privilege. And that is it. I don't mean that as a woman, I don't mean that as an insult to men, but it just is. It's a thing that boys and men, young men and older men are brought up in a culture that they know their place in the world, and in the world of business or in the boardroom, particularly in senior management executive teams, they have been and continue to be the domain mainly of men. So when women come in as leaders with perhaps a different culture or a different way of doing things, you have to squeeze into that space, and you have to have the confidence to do that. So that's something that's taken me a bit of time to feel comfortable in that space. But I think I am now. But it's still there, and as I say, there are many men I'm extremely fond of. I'm not anti-men. If I'm challenging somebody around an issue, whereas if I think they've been heterosexist or benignly sexist or disablest, sometimes I'll challenge it and sometimes I won't. I think the taxi example is quite a good one, because before COVID, when we used to be out and about and I would get in a taxi, sometimes I would get in the taxi and the taxi drivers always wanted to chat to you, and they would sometimes ask things like, what does your husband do? So I would then have to think, do you know what? It's 6 o'clock. I've had a really busy week. 6 o'clock on a Friday night, I just want to get home. Do I really want to get into a conversation with a taxi driver who's probably going to say something along the lines of, oh, that's okay that you've got a wife. and it's okay, I don't want his permission, so you just think, oh no, I can't be bothered. Whereas other times I may feel more inspired and want to help educate somebody and decide to. So it's the same across the piece. And it's also about choosing not to create enemies. I think you can be too brittle around this kind of stuff and too forthright. And I think as a younger person, I may well have been. I think I've softened around the edges of that a little as I've got more grey-haired, because I've recognised that where I've lost people, because I've maybe pushed too hard. So. Be yourself and believe in yourself earlier than I did. You know, I think when we were talking about doing this interview, Camille, we talked about imposter syndrome, and I think I had a large dose of that when I was younger, and I've managed to leave that behind now, very much so. And I think with that comes that ability for me to bring love into the boardroom and into the organisations that I work with, and helping people to connect in that very human level, because we're, you know, in health and social care, we're dealing with very human issues all the time. And if we can't do that with compassion, with love, with empathy, I think we're in a hiding to nowhere. And as leaders, we have to set the culture. You know, you can't just sit you know, in grand isolation in a boardroom and write a strategy and, you know, send off the, you know, people to who are in operational roles to deliver on that. You know, you have to have an understanding of what the issues are, and that real passion for making sure that we do the very, very best that we possibly can do. And that, you know, that as a leader, we're there to support people and to listen and to reflect and to change direction if we need to from the feedback. It's a whole process of co-production. I just happen to have got to the stage of my life where I'm able to do the roles that I do, but it's only because I've done some of those other things in the past, and I can only do what I do if other people in the organisation do their part and do their part really well. So I think if they see me doing my part well, hopefully that's reflected in them. So for women leaders out there, yes, stay true to yourself and show that you care. One of the issues for a lot of women leaders is imposter syndrome, and feeling that you suddenly find yourself in this role, and oh my goodness, is somebody going to find out that you're just Susan and that you're actually not able to do this particular job that you've been appointed to. So for me, what, you know, I've always tried to do personal development around any roles that I've been in. So once I find myself in leadership roles as a chief executive, I, you know, made sure that I was reading, I was engaging, I was attending leadership events, and it was through talking to other women, other role models, and reading stuff internationally that I heard about imposter syndrome and got to understand it. And you know, through that process, and then using mentoring to reflect back, I think is invaluable. And choosing your mentor really carefully. It's a really important relationship that you would have with a mentor or a coach, you know. So choosing that person well, I think, can really help develop you as a leader and develop your confidence in that area. I've been most proud of the equality work that I've managed to weave throughout everything that I've done, because I think looking back, you know, I can recognise that I was talking about equality issues before I really had a label for it, when I was first a young professional, when I was only 20, and, you know, really getting upset about if things that I felt were unfair, and the opportunity should be the same for everybody. I've recognised that throughout my career, and, you know, I've taken the chance to do something about that, and that in turn has led to changes in organisations. I've seen those things embedded in, but also changes to legislations. You know, so I was involved in the Disability Discrimination Act being enacted 25 years ago, and then equal marriage happening in 2014 here in Scotland. So it was, you know, it's really, these things, you know, are the icing on the cake for all the work that, you know, you've done, all the conversations you've had, all the interviews I've given to the press, all the, you know, because I've spent a lot of time revealing who I am over the years, and there's been a reason for that. You know, it's about being a role model and about saying, here I am, I'm a disabled woman, I'm a lesbian, but actually I'm perfectly capable of doing the roles that I put myself forward for, and this is why.